Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. Potential standards that social media influencers probably should have, as we know for a fact that they are influencing kids and being a negative influence on these kids, whether or not they want to. They make these kids start thinking the most ludicrous things because they consume their information constantly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? We didn't have an episode last Thursday, and I apologize for that. Sometimes if we don't have a guest and if the occasion doesn't call for it, just to put out an episode, the Thursday guest ones won't happen. But the Monday ones will always happen. So we'll always have an episode on Monday, conversing or talking about something in particular. Now, today was going to be about private prisons and whether or not they are right, basically, for the justice system in America. But we're going to tangent from that. That'll be a conversation for another day. And we're going to focus on the responsibility of prominent individuals. And there's a lot to touch upon, right? We got people like Sneeko. We got people like Susanna Gibson, like Lauren Boebert. These are all influential individuals, and I think this is a very important conversation to have in reference to what they are providing for society and how they should be or shouldn't be acting for the betterment of society in terms of cultural or social norms, okay? So before we dive into that, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation, because there's a lot to touch upon, let's start off with a what you need to know. What is going on in society that you may want to be brushed up on? Few things. There's a current lawsuit going on between the United States versus Google. The Department of Justice has accused the tech giant of violating antitrust laws by allegedly abusing its dominance in search and search advertising to suppress competition. A little bit more about it. The trial will center on Google's billions of dollars in payments to browser creators like Apple for ensuring its search engine will be the default. It will also touch on contracts, with Android phone manufacturers requiring them to preload the app, which often can't be deleted. Officials say the result is a self-reinforcing monopoly that has locked up 90% of the search query channels, obstructing competition. Google says users prefer its search engine and argues these agreements did not prevent other companies from developing or promoting their own search engines, i.e. Microsoft and Bing. Very interesting. I don't know how this is going to go down because there's definitely a monopoly in terms of search engines. Like Google dominates. I do use Bing, but we can all recognize the difference between the two, right? So it's an interesting situation. I'm curious to see how that kind of unfolds itself. There's a recent Biden impeachment inquiry. They plan to impeach Biden due to circumstances regarding Hunter Biden being over other countries and certain situations. I think it's called Burisma. I might have said that wrong. And whether or not he did certain things for financial gain. So there's an official impeachment out there. So all the conservatives, all the red Republicans, all the Trumpies can now feel have a little bit more closure. I think Kevin McCarthy is the one initiating it. So we'll see how everything kind of points out. Putin hosts Kim Jong-un about military support. So, I'm sure he's going to the most un-American-ish, friendly-ish, like the worst most unfriendly people to America and going to them for help. Not a surprise. Hunter Biden indicted on 3 federal firearm charges related to a 2018 gun purchase. NASA released its first report finding no evidence that suggests UAPs have an extraterrestrial origin. Rep. Lauren Boebert apologized for vaping and getting caught being vaping and getting caught being seen getting felt up in the theater. And then there's Russian and Ukraine uh, genocide claim. So let me read that for you. Lawyers representing Ukraine and Russia squared off today at the International Court of Justice, arguing over the legal technicalities underlying the ongoing war. Ukraine accuses Russia of abusing international law by claiming its invasion of the country last February was an attempt to intervene and stop an ongoing genocide. So Russia is claiming Ukraine was genociding Russian citizens. Article 1 of the Geneva Convention requires signees, which includes Ukraine and Russia, to prevent and punish genocide. Russia has claimed Ukraine was systematically killing Russian-speaking populations in the eastern part of the country, obliging it to step in. So they're seeing if they can get... It's very interesting that Russia just now is trying to get this approved or get this squared off with the international. To be fair, they could have been working on this for a while. If proven right, then I don't know. It would change my whole perception of this conversation if Russia was proven to be in the right in this situation, that Ukraine was genociding Russian civilians. It would be hard pressed for me to defend or acknowledge that Ukraine deserves my sympathy. But we're going to have to see. More evidence will come out, and then we'll have a better understanding of the circumstance. Okay. So, thoughts on the Hunter Biden inquiry, or the Joe Biden inquiry? A funny thing is, when it comes to the Joe Biden inquiry, is that I saw a video, and I think this is a very smart video, and I think I might incorporate this more with guests who come on the show, allowing them to really explain their side. And I was watching Destiny while I was at work. And basically, Destiny was listening to a conservative kind of lay out the whole Burisma situation. And after he laid out everything, my takeaway is that, okay, I can kind of, based off, if you got more evidence, I can see why an investigation is at very least necessary. Okay, so I'm not bought that Joe Biden inherently did corrupt things. I think the evidence doesn't back that. But if they have more evidence that I didn't see in that video, an investigation may be warranted. Okay? So that's where I come from it. I'm more like, if people are doing corrupt things, they deserve to get investigated. So we'll see. While the shell companies, I mean, it's really hard for me to say. I don't really have an explanation. I just don't see that there's really direct evidence. Because the shell company situation they're using for circumstantial evidence to say that, he did this and that for potential financial gain based off his meeting at Burisma, right? And I see the circumstantial evidence, but without hard concrete proof to kind of prove it. And just because there are circumstances that are maybe odd, they could be odd, but unless they are proven to be correlated, then they're just coincidences. That's just what it is. And that can happen. It can. And I'm not saying Joe Biden's situation is a coincidence. I'm just saying I would need more direct evidence before I make a stronger claim about the circumstance. So that's where I come from it when I'm based off what I've seen. It's not something I look into too in depthly because I don't really care about Joe Biden and in terms of that situation. But to be fair, maybe I should because he is a political leader. It's kind of the same thing with Donald Trump. If these individuals are political leaders that are going to take office, it's only fair for me as an individual who is invested into the political game or invested into what is going on in our country to probably make sure that the most up and up individuals are taking office. So to be fair, maybe that's something I should be taking into consideration a little bit more. My guy.
Yo.
Paul, what's good?
Nothing much, man. Sorry for being late.
That's fine. It's fine. To start off, did some what you need to know, some current events, and then I had someone in the chat kind of bringing up the Joe, because one of the what you need to know things is Joe Biden's getting investigated for all the stuff that people think he's corrupt for. So it's interesting because based on, because I'm pretty sure you saw the Destiny video because I was watching that while I was at work,
Oh
and
yeah.
I appreciated like just hearing all that information because I never really looked into it. I didn't really care that much at first, but after hearing all the evidence, I agree with Destiny's conclusion that it's more circumstantial. But having an investigation being brought up, I think is perfectly fine if they have more evidence that
Well,
that wasn't brought up.
the only thing I've ever been able to really say about the matter, I guess, is just simply, look, if they do find something against him, just throw him in jail. Like it's no big deal. Like I know some liberals that like kind of like stake it out for Hunter for some reason. I think it's stupid. And like Joe Biden himself has said, hey, look, my son does this thing and he's like convicted, then that's it. Like he's going to go to jail and I'm not going to do anything to impede it. So, yeah, I mean, that's been the thing for me. As to the merit of some of the stuff, I still think we're kind of at that nothing burger point, But that being said, some of the information that's come out is a little bit of like an eyebrow raiser. However, like you stated, it is circumstantial. Also mirrored by Destiny.
So yeah, we'll see kind of how everything turns out, and it's only fair to make sure that when you have people in power that they are kind of coveted a little bit more thoroughly than others for obvious reasons. But in terms of the conversation for today, initially it was going to be about private prisons, but Jonathan is in, he's in that field. He wants to talk about this, so we're going to wait on him before we have that conversation. But I think a little bit more interesting conversation. And I'm going to start it off with this because this is not something we've done before. I'm going to play a video. And then this is going to go into the bigger conversation. So right here, hopefully, if it's laggy, then I do apologize on the stream or in the video, but at least you should be able to hear it. But so here's a video of Sneeko meeting some of his fans. Paul, have you seen this?
No, I have not. I'm kind of curious.
Okay. All right. So let me zoom in. Let's watch.
What did you say? Fuck the woman. Fuck the woman.
What? No, wait. We love women. We love women.
But not like transgenders.
Yes, sir. We love everybody.
Okay.
No.
The lag is pretty terrible for me. I can't understand it.
You said it's lagging for you? This is what I'll do for you.
Yeah.
This is what I'll do for you. I'll put the thing for you can watch it on your own, but I'll continue playing it on this end. So I put the link in the
for sure.
What have I done?
Can I get in the video? Fucking talk. Can I get in the video?
Yeah. Talk to him.
Yo, what's up?
So that's the video. If y'all could, I'll see the run back when I like edit everything to see if everything's on the up and up. If it's not, then I'll just like edit it and put the video in there and do some editing to make it all work out.
Yeah.
But Paul, did you look at the video real quick?
Yeah. It's pretty pretty predictable, and it's exactly how you think it would be, right? Like Sneako's just like a thug, dude. Like he's just like he like promotes this crap all the time, and these poor young kids are doing it. Like that kid coming up and saying, like, "Yo, like fuck the women" and stuff like that. It's lame, right? I don't know. How do you feel?
So this begs the bigger question for me, because I've brought it up before, but the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a potential problem moving forward, and that is that these individuals are gaining so much influence, and it's not like they're getting influence based off doing something inherently hard or challenging, like playing a sport and practicing all day. No, sometimes it's a luck thing. Now there is hard work to it, posting consistently, but there is no there's no guide on how you're supposed to be doing things. It's just, hey, if you create something that is entertaining, you might get famous from it and do whatever you want after that. So there's really no checks and balances. It's either you make it or you don't, basically. Before I dive into that, someone said, what are your thoughts on the ongoing battle of the Katanga Valley? Do you know what that means?
Yeah, it's my dumbass friend who said he wanted to watch it. Yeah, it's a joke that makes fun of veterans who didn't go into combat, talking about combat the entire time. Yeah, so you just make up a location. Yeah,
That's crazy, bro. Not gonna lie. Because I was in the military, but I never went in combat, but I never like talk about combat like that. I was like, bro, you just gotta be honest. It's very cringe to kind of
yeah,
uplift yourself like that. You gotta be
yeah,
humble. You gotta be humble.
for sure.
But in terms of the conversation at hand, it's it's very troubling. It's very worrying because of they have this no kind of limit to what they do. There seem to be in certain spaces a general understanding of how you should act, but I think as we go on, we are moving farther and farther from a norm of proper responsible actions, because just in the tweet that you saw, one of the things that Mike Mayak said, I think that's how you say his name, is that I don't blame Sneeko. And one thing that I hear from like content creators is I'm not a role model. It's not my responsibility. And it really begs the question. It really kind of tells you a story that they feel like they can gain all the popularity, they can gain all the clout, they can gain all the influence from the same kids that Sneeko just did, do whatever they want in reference to it, but take no responsibility based off what their viewers do. And it seems incredibly irresponsible, but it just seems like it's going to keep on happening over and over again. And obviously we could talk about that more. I'm not sure. I think there needs to be a real self-reflection on how we're going about this, especially as influence grows.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that allege these media types don't have any sort of like string that they pull on their listenership or their viewership. It's pretty ludicrous, right? There are people that strongly admire them, and you can just read the comment section to kind of see it for yourself, where they go on and on about how this person saved them from suicide or depression, right?
Yeah.
Or how it brought them closer to God. How it recently helped them throughout their divorce, right? So to state that, I shouldn't be a role model. Well, the unfortunate reality is that your entire channel is giving advice, right? It's making truth claims about the world, and now you have to defend that reality and also accept the consequence of it, right? If you cannot accept the consequence of what you are purporting out there, right, then why are you saying it in the first place, right? The dollar value is going to still catch up to you mentally eventually. Just look at the way Sneeko looks at the kids in the video, right? He's awestruck, right? He's like, dude, what the fuck have I done, right? But you and I both know he's just going to go straight back home and enjoy that paycheck he's been getting from YouTube the entire time afterwards. But still, you still see that glimpse of moment where he realizes, I am that role model. I am that person that influences these children's lives, and I should do better.
And the crazy part is, because like you just said, I saw a video, I think it was Apple and Preach, and they kind of were talking about it a little bit. And apparently right after, Sneeko went online and said, don't blame me, blame the parents who okay the pride flags, okay all that stuff. And it's just another way to escape from your responsibility, because I do think there is something to be said that parents should have a stricter, not control, but at the very least be more aware of what their children are consuming in terms of media or social media. And I've always said that just putting a tablet or putting a phone in front of a kid and just letting them do whatever they want is not the right way to go about that, because of how much they are consuming and how much they are kind of learning, even though it's not supposed to be something that you learn from. But that's how it works. When you consume information, you learn from it and you get shaped by it to a certain extent. So there's something to be said there, but at the same time, it's a two-way street because the person is still creating the content. It would be foolish. It would be foolish if we went over to the people who do some of the most craziest things on the dark web, for example, and go like, "Oh man, those people in the dark web, they're not at fault because the person who's watching it shouldn't be watching it." We recognize that that person's idiotic for finding a torrent and going out of his way to go on the dark web. But at the same time, we recognize how reprehensible the individuals that is on the dark web are doing some of the most ludicrous and most inhumane things on that side of the internet. And there's a bigger conversation we're gonna have for this because we've talked about it, and I'm sure I'm gonna one of these days I'm gonna try to have a decently big content creator on so we really can diagnose individual responsibility for content creators. But the bigger conversation kind of extends beyond Sneeko too, because there are other individuals who are prominent and doesn't necessarily relate to kids, but are prominent figures in society, and we see what they've been doing. For example, have you seen the stuff regarding Lauren Bobart? Lauren Bobart?
Yeah, the titty grab.
Yeah. So we seen her go to, and keep in mind, we know Lauren Bobart. She's a very attractive politician. She can live her life, but we seen her go to the theater. We seen her getting felt up. We seen her vaping, and she apologized for the vaping at the very least and all that stuff. And there's a huge outroar based off her actions as a political leader and how she's kind of behaving herself is the best way to put it in that situation. Another example is Susanna Gibson. You know who that is, Paul?
No.
Okay, so Susanna Gibson is an individual who's trying to run from some type of political leadership position in Virginia, I believe. And apparently she does cam services. And apparently those cam services got leaked on the internet. So we see her naked and all, and she does like services with her getting railed on the internet, and she wants to run for a political leadership position. So in these situations, we have individuals, and whether or not you think they're right or wrong, but it really says something about our current role models moving forward and their behavior moving forward. I'm curious, Paul, and your friend said something interesting. He said feels more like he blamed parents for their lack of parenting just to shift the blame from his pretty bad online rhetoric more than anything. I agree. So I'm curious, Paul, in terms of these role models and their behavior, should there be a standard of behavior that we should align to for role models, or maybe if you want to be more specific, for political leadership?
So it's a good question, Riddell. I think that one of the biggest things I'll say that might shock you a little bit is I think the entire Laura Boebert thing is a nothing burger. I've said this forever, and I remain consistent upon it. The lives these people live, like sexually and the whatnot, are things that are of their own personality and are not effective of the legislature. Representatives aren't necessarily our leaders or community leaders. They're people that essentially just step up and vote in things that we as the electorate want, right? So as a result of that, I actually found it to be kind of ironic and funny and, like contradictory, but I don't necessarily find it to be this thing that a lot of liberals are kind of making it out to be. I've said the same thing for like Bill Clinton as well as other politicians that find themselves in similar areas, right? Even like, for example, like Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, smoking that crack and hanging out with all those prostitutes. I always thought it was a nothing burger, just as much so in virtue of the fact that, it has nothing to do with the overall decision making of that president, right? Yeah, I'm sure Jonathan would probably have something to say about the moral nature and the conundrum that arises from it. But I'll just simply say I really don't think it presents itself. A lot of people consider JFK to be one of our best presidents we've ever had, and he was a huge womanizer, right? So it seems to me that all these things people do in the bedroom have no real transferability to them whatsoever. No. As for social role models, I do believe in that case where there are people that admire them so much at a higher propensity, there should be some form of guideline they should follow, right? And they should know the impact that they have on society through the words that they have or that they say. Especially for that look for extremely vulnerable young people and young men, like that of Andrew Tate, Sneeko, even I would say like now what seems to be John Zerka. So yeah, like with these types, I think it is definitely the case. But for a political leadership, I simply don't care. Like I've never really found it to be that compelling of an argument. Like I said, I think it's funny, right? But it's definitely not like a moral conundrum that a lot of liberals are making it out to be. No.
So when it comes to the Bobart situation, I also think it was a nothing burger personally. However, it is kind of tough because of the social media age where everything can get caught, hacked, and posted. It's quite unfortunate. And when it comes to privacy, it's nearly impossible to do. And to the expectation that an individual should be professional every time they step out in public is unrealistic. It's ludicrous because I'm even thinking to myself, although there's a certain level of like professionalism that you should portray as an individual, especially when you're talking and or kind of representing an important issue, there still needs to be a recognition that you are a human. Like there are going to be instances where you're being flirty with a significant other, when you're drinking, having fun, when you're getting in a heated debate about, sports or whatever. So those things happen and it's just natural and normal at the end of the day. However, even though the Lauren Bobart thing, I didn't think too much of it. She vaped, she got felt up. Okay, normal human interaction for the most part. When it comes to being like a porn star, that's when I don't know if I can be okay with it as much because acting, doing things that is not professional, maybe like doing things that are casual, like the things that Boba are doing, is one thing. But I'm under my own kind of personal thought about this is that I do think there are levels of normalcy that should be probably better for society in general. I can be proven wrong based off more evidence, but I think when it comes to representing a certain type of way of life, which is, with Susanna Gibson being a porn star, I think since you're in that position and what you're representing that you're representing that, there's two things I have issue with. Well, obviously you're going to be a role model for other individuals thinking that I can be a political leader and I can be naked on the internet. And then the other stuff is the not technically your fault, but we know all the other countries that you're going to be dealing with and all the other individuals you're going to be dealing with. The ability to communicate on a similar level, because that's what the aspect of professionalism offers you, is a kind of certain level of equality that I'm here just like you. But when you're already kind of put in that, you may be here, but I see you as less, whether that's fair or not, it's completely up to you, from like other politicians or other leaders that definitely hate that type of lifestyle. It really just sheds a bad light, especially if these are our political leaders. So there's a political reason and potential social reason why these individuals should have a somewhat of a standard that we should abide by. But at the same time, I wouldn't say make it illegal necessarily, because that's ludicrous, right?
Yeah, the thing I'll say, man, is that like it's going to be the electorate that holds them to it, right? I mean, if this person can serve the American people, or rather like their district in an adequate enough way, then it can like rule these things out. Like the first thing that came to mind with it, right, is like I don't really necessarily care what her prior employment was if it's something that's relatively victimless, right? That being said, like if it was someone that was like working for like a Fortune 500 or something like that, or a private military company, then of course I'd care. But in this case of, how do I put it? In this case of them just like doing this thing with their life, that doesn't really cause that much pain to others, then yeah, I don't necessarily see the full scale issue with it, nor like necessitating any regulation. No.
Yeah, regulation is far-fetched. It's hard for me to kind of recognize the individual. Now, is it impossible that despite, wanting to be very freaky and being naked on the internet, she has great political ideas and great political thoughts? It's possible, I guess. I do think there are certain levels of who you are that kind of sums up how you're going to be. So it would be a very unique and very rare situation for you to find someone that's that promiscuous and that much willing to create a job of being naked and getting fucked on the internet to then being a great political thought leader. But it's not impossible. So I would say that the electorate and the people voting, the people who are seeing the individuals, they have every right to, at the very least, figure out whether or not this is the right person for them moving forward. So I would adhere to that. I probably would still stand by the premise that I would hear them out, because I think it's foolish to discount everything a person says based off their background, but they definitely get a microscope beyond what they do. And honestly, deservingly so. If you want to go in that field, you knew the backlash for who you were going to be represented as moving forward, because like I said, you're going to be seen as a role model and a political thought leader at the same time. So these are things that you have to recognize when you're in these positions. So that's what I'll say would be on that. Unless, and I understand the aspect of like, if their prior career potentially contradicts the interests of the nation, that's pretty obvious, of course. So I guess let's touch upon the social leaders, and this is where it gets really interesting for me now that I think about the internet and the potential regulation that we may need to have of kids consuming blindness content. At first, we had the conversation where we were saying things that, no, we shouldn't have any regulations for kids going on the internet. It's the parents. But I'm gonna be honest, Paul. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. The more I think about it, and the more I observe different search situations and scenarios, I'm not going to say the parents don't have rights as the parents, but I'm having less faith that parents can make the right decision for their kids generally, personally.
You are on top of it, my man. I mean, like, welcome to the good guys side here on this one, man. Like, I've been putting up with this for way too long now, where it's just consistently over and over again of people saying they know better than some of the experts on things as basic as nutrition, right? It's just incredible to me. I don't know. What brought you to this conclusion?
Because the more and more I think, because I think the label of parent was so powerful. And we think of all these situations where it's like the parents should have the right to think of this for their kids. But I'm realizing the same parent, I would not give the same graces if I just talked to the person if I didn't know they were a parent. If I'm being honest, they're just adults. Sure, they're the parent of the adults, but they're just adults at the same time. And they're going to make mistakes. They're going to be ignorant on how things really work, because we know that they're not going to be as educated as some people, like you said, a nutritionist, for example. Of course, they're going to have the moral high ground because for the most part, I'm assuming, they're going to have their kids' best interests at stake. But that doesn't automatically mean that just because they think they have the kid's best interest at stake means that it is the best interest for the kid. So these things are much more nuanced than a blanket statement of the parent should have all autonomy over what's going on with the kids. And when it comes to the conversation regarding the kids and the internet, I'm leaning more and more to the side that there may need to be, because the internet is becoming more and more and more intertwined with society. And although I will spread the message that parents, you can't just let your kids consume the internet and consume social media all day, every day, and not like parent, that's not going to reach everybody.
Yeah.
So at that point, regulation might just need to be the answer in those situations. What do you think?
So I guess like to me, like the technology stuff is one thing, all right. The bigger picture for me though is like basic necessities and stuff like that. However, on the aspect of that with technologies and stuff like that, I definitely think it's the first like kind of like first thing where you can easily notice it. You know what I mean? Like it's the most apparent. You're going to see children with these devices, right? You're going to see them using it at the dinner table, social functions, and not socializing with other children, playing with them, etc. Right? You're going to see all these problems kind of like emerge. But furthermore, I guess like when you work like in educational environments, you start to see other areas of a child's life, and where you kind of see this like knowing better style of parenting where they think they just can like write off, for example, their child like enrolling in a part of school or something like that, right? This is something that I've kind of started to notice significantly more when I was doing a lot of my volunteering. And like I said before, right, when we bring all these things down for the welfare of American children to an individual responsibility, it feels as if that it's not actually grounded in a patriotic like style, right? It's only grounded in my child, not like the children, like the child. To me, that's problematic, right? Like, I mean, the nation should strive to grow itself as much as possible. It should do everything in its power to embolden its children and give them as many opportunities as they can get. But like it just like more and more and more, I just feel as if we keep tuning in to this garbage philosophy of just saying, well, look, like the parents do know better, in fact. Like and by the way, it is their kid, and I think that it just sets us back. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to know that I don't think myself or Paul is really kind of saying that we need to take rights from parents or decisions away from parents.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I think when it comes down to these situations, the parents need to be much more open-minded on what is going on. And does that mean more education for parents? I don't know how you would regulate that or force parents to do something like that. It's kind of, but at the very least, if you're going to bring in school, obviously the school and the parents need to be in a cohesive relationship to kind of figure this stuff out. But at the same time, I think the philosophy, like you said, is just a little too black and white. And one thing that I constantly say is that every situation, because not all situations are the same, every contextual situation regarding a parent's decision versus what a child should or should not be doing should be talked about in proper context. There's no one solution that, oh, the parent is going to be 100% correct, or the system is going to be 100% correct, or the expert's going to be 100% correct. Because I'm sure, and this is usually a very conservative talking point, so I'll speak to you, conservative parents. I'm sure that in the situation relating to, teaching kids regarding maybe LGBTQ stuff, you'll be going something like, no, I want to teach them my values, my X, Y, and Z. But at the same vein, you are more than willing to send your kid off to church and let someone teach them about God and their perception of God and all that stuff, right? So and I'm not blaming. This is like, you guys are people are humans. I'm not gonna basically how I was about to say it's gonna make it sound like I'm not human for a second, but people are people. They make mistakes. They understand what they understand, what is in front of them. At the end of the day, what's important is to keep the open mind, to think that, to always have the ability to understand that I don't know everything, to have that hubris, to be humble, and your decision will be the final decision. I think, unless it's an extreme situation, it's hard for me to say that a parent's decision should be the final decision. But at the very least, parents should be more willing to kind of work with the state, the country, the experts for their kids' behalf, because it's the kids' future that we're all kind of trying to work towards for the most part. But to touch upon the stuff that I'm talking about a little bit more specifically. So when we're looking at children, and we recognize as of right now, in terms of the social leaders that are gaining in terms of influence, that are being much more unhinged, personally. I think, Paul, you said some great names. People like John Zerka saying stuff like, oh man, I'm a pedophile online, think it's a joke. You know what I'm saying? People like Sneeko getting kids to say that trans people should die. You know, stuff like that. And it's not even the crazy, righty, religious, red pill types. The lefties, too. They are just as unhinged. Just being perfectly honest. So at this point, we know these people, these kids are consuming the content. Should social media platforms make more strict age restrictions to ensure that children, I'm just talking about children, so anybody below 12 years old, because those kids look below 12, so I think that's a good age.
Yeah.
Anybody below 12 years old cannot access a social media platform, the same social media platform, by the way, where we have actual porn on the sites. Bro, Twitter is getting wild. I don't know why Elon Musk is not banning that harder. The actual porn on the sites.
Yeah.
So should we have a stricter regulations to prevent these children from going on these platforms?
Absolutely. I mean, I think YouTube actually took the best model and approach, and a lot of content creators did some fake outrage in relation to it. But we kind of like inevitably saw that, look, you know, the YouTube Kids function is something that does in fact work. And furthermore, really does restrict what a child can see on the internet. I think that's, I think better for American children to keep them away from these like shithead deviants like Sneeko, right?
What
Or like
does
Andrew Tate.
YouTube do exactly in terms
So
of age
the way it
verification?
works is like a parent can enable a function for their child through a child account, right? That child account has a lot of different locks on it and uses the overall platform significantly different from how you and I would. So, for example, it disables auto playing. It disables watching videos when you like put it in portrait, like on the bottom right, or the bottom left to like kind of browse more. And then furthermore, you can only watch things that are for YouTube Kids, which go through special sensors.
Okay, for their age verification, do they have like an ID verification?
It's made by the parents. The parents are the ones that make the account for the child.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting model. Obviously the hard part about this is the parents that don't that just allow their kids to go on their YouTube account. That's hard to kind of figure out properly, depending on how severe we make a punishment for that. And then obviously the YouTube version of, going on YouTube without an account, where you could just browse on YouTube without an account. So those are harder, but I at the very least, it's a step in the right direction to understand that we should have things a lot more kid friendly for children. So something like Twitter, which has unhinged people and porn on its platform, places like Instagram, of course, Instagram/Facebook. And this kind of goes into the next line of questioning is, although I'm pro state rights, I'm all for it. At some point, when do we look at the influence of the internet as it becomes one-on-one in terms of living in society, and say that maybe we should make a federal regulation for kids not being able to browse these type of platforms?
I mean, I'm fine with like kind of like minor approaches to the legislation, right? But I do think that it is something that could have some relatively negative overregulation consequences, right? Insofar as like how YouTube's cracking down on stuff within its policy, for example, against like historical YouTubers or history YouTubers and the like. So yeah, I'd probably actually be in some way almost against it, just in virtue of the problems that present themselves with it, because a lot of people get caught in the fray. A really good channel, Armchair Historian, recently unfortunately announced that, look, I can't make the content anymore that people want because of the problems associated with the new policy. And I think some of those policies were actually dragged in through prior federal legislation for both the Republican and Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's a very tough circumstance and situation. And I do think if we had better ways to ensure the separation from content that an average individual can see versus content that kids see, if we had a better way to kind of distinguish the two things, I don't think this would be as big of a problem. But, private corporations like YouTube don't. So they only can do what they can do to make sure that they're not held liable for potential
Yeah, for
problems.
sure.
So, with that said, it's just very tough for me because this kind of goes into the freedom versus safety conversation that me and Jonathan had, in terms of when you're creating a more safe society, you're losing a bit of freedom basically every single time to ensure that more safe. And what is better, what is more valuable, freedom or safety? If we work towards the ideal utopia, not an actual utopia, but a potential one, there's a difference there. Working towards an actual utopia is completely what's the word? I'm gonna just say ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But the idea of progressing towards that is the same thing as progressing towards the vision of perfection, is like continuously making things better. That's kind of how I kind of look at those things. But my thing regarding our current American society is, the more I see technology, social media, and I love social media, I love media, I love technology, all that stuff. But the more I see it kind of affecting our society at large, it really, and I guess this could be human nature, it really makes me think, should we take better preventative measures, or are we going to wait until something's wrong and then adapt? What is the best case scenario for those two things? I'm not really sure, because society will continue to change, because we're moving towards virtual reality. We're moving towards augmented reality. AI technology is going to be casual use to the point where everybody's going to have an individual AI right on their hip, right? So we're moving towards that. So while also moving towards that, you could argue that people are learning less and less how to be proper people. You could argue, especially if we don't have if we have absolute access to technology all the time, that kids are going to grow up more and more unsuited to like society, like being in personal interactions, understanding potential issues. Maybe even their moral values and cultural values will be completely skewed based off the minority amount of information that they experience off the internet. So it's really it's a tough conversation to have. At the very least, I'll ask you this, Paul. At the very least, as a for you in Florida, for you in your state, would you be okay with a state regulation that makes
absolutely. I'll stop you right there. I mean, all these fucks live in Miami. Okay, so like, we have to hit it at the root, Riddell. Like, it's becoming such a problem, and you kind of see it just mirrored throughout all of the youth all the time, right? I'm not joking. I've said this before, right? There was a kid who was in one of these classes I was looking over, and he had a minion with like a Nazi armband on it. And
Jesus.
I thought it was pretty funny originally, right? I'm not gonna lie. Like I was like, that's hilarious. But then I saw him watching Hitler speeches and stuff
Oh
like
my
that.
goodness.
And like this, like watching what was it, like Goebbels speeches, and furthermore watching then like all his Andrew Tate stuff as well, right? Like he asked one of the people that came into our facility as like a volunteer to draw him for him, and the volunteer did it, right? So
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
it's something that's like crazy. So yeah, I mean, let's tackle it at the root, right? Like because Florida unfortunately can be both a place where so many great things in this country start, and then also where so many terrible things like hurricanes, sinkholes, influencers, like all stuff like that. Yeah. So
It's
100%.
actually insane how my position has changed, and that's what happens when you get in the spirit and critically think about these things a lot more. Because initially, when it came to the Andrew Tate stuff, I'm like, and people were going to the vein saying, "Hey, man, teachers were saying stuff like, hey, the Andrew Tate's a bad influence, X, Y, and Z, blah blah blah." I definitely was initially saying my response was, he does some good things, but parents should have a stronger, check on what their kids consume. And after really thinking about it a lot more, I get to realize, bro, this guy was a horrible influence. Just translate this to something a little bit more reasonable for all these adults in their mind, because I think the problem, Paul, is that adults in this current generation that's like older than me and from like generations behind me, they just don't understand how damaging internet can really be for a kid. They just don't understand it. And the best way to kind of make people understand is imagine your kid grew up in a neighborhood where there's like, and they're hanging out with two families of, let's go extreme, I don't care, two families of Nazis. And they are constantly hanging out with the kid. They're seeing the parents. What do you think will happen? They're going to get consumed into the culture. That's just what is going to happen. Their brain is going to develop and it's going to latch onto it and think that way of life is the way of life because they keep on consuming the information. You can argue that constant viewing of media on a tablet that you have 24/7 is worse because you're honestly consuming way more information and you're consuming it much longer, and you get to pick and choose the information you get to consume, and you just go into a selective bias rabbit hole. So you could argue it's worse. We see it happen. Could you imagine kids go at any point saying trans people should die? Like, what? Like, what are we talking about? Like, that is such a crazy thing. I don't even know if like most conservatives would say that. That would be an insane position.
What's even stranger about it is that like this is like such a vitriolic hate for a group of people that the majority of these children have never met. Right?
Exactly.
Like it's just, I don't know, like it's just such a grand dissociation from like the area that you reside in, right? So much so that it makes you hate people that you don't know anything about at all. It's just bizarre. Yeah.
And it makes me, because one of the things that and maybe this is not an issue, but I'll say it anyway. Maybe one of the things that I always say that's an important thing that people should do to kind of gain perspective is experience different things, talk to different things. And the very least, for the example of like the Nazi kid, is that once they experience other people, they start kind of changing their perspective. My worry about the next generation that is getting all their perspective from the social media, their tablet, my concern, and you can let me know if this is a viable concern. My concern is that the only way they're going to go away from that is if they see that same type of content but on a different side. Like the only way they can change their mind basically is if someone like Sneeko goes like, "Bro, this is wrong." Like they won't, even if they meet people. My concern is that they still won't change. The only way that's changing them is the tablet.
I'm a little bit, well, yeah, so I agree with that, right? I'm a little bit optimistic. Like, look, I used to listen to some pretty fucking stupid people when I was growing up. And then, of course, I found Destiny's Channel, which really did change a lot of stuff for me. So I think that people can come to their own realization, I guess, through consuming media, granted, which sucks, but it's better than nothing. I mean, keep in mind, right? If we looked at like the days back then, right, you could have some guy that lives in a rural environment and then starts to believe a bunch of crap and has no chance to ever see a challenge. Whereas now, like, I guess one of the benefits is that you can see a challenge, right?
But at the same time, because like we both respect Destiny, but we recognize that the left hates Destiny.
Well, you see, this is the thing I'll tell you, Riddell, right? The purge is happening, right? I don't know if you caught up with current events, but it's like it's at zero tolerance status now. Like Destiny is growing at a pace to where he might actually outpace Hassan eventually. And if that occurs, it's going to be such a massive win. He's also legitimizing his platform through even more campaigning for the Biden administration, as well as local Democratic leaders. And they're willing to see if they can actually pour in up to $500,000 into like a mini super PAC. So I think that it's going to be something that's real. But the first thing we have to do is we need to regulate these fucking psychopaths who have basically destroyed everything that's been built by liberals. And to do that, it comes through, like both social personalities like that of Destiny, but also the hardworking men and women that work in these political branches that, are making these things known themselves, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I do hope that Destiny becomes a proper benchmark for the left to be much more reasonable. Because a lot of like how Destiny approaches things is exactly how I approach things, and I think it's the best way to kind of be very open minded. But and then the right, I like how Ben Shapiro approaches things. Daily Wire, like Matt Walsh is kind of cringe, but the Daily Wire generally is probably the best kind of standard for the right. A lot of the things.
I agree. I think he's not like, what's the word for it? I think he's like relatively bad faith still in a lot of cases, but where he stands out is he doesn't do the cheap gotchas anymore. Like that part of his career is over. Whereas Walsh talks to like pants on head, stupid liberals that know like not a damn thing, and then asks them what like a woman is, right? Like it's like a Steven Crowder thing, right?
Yeah, Crowder's definitely fell off.
I mean that like after look, Jonathan said it best, right? Like he's a pig. Like it's like it's crazy.
Oh man,
I don't know.
Fall from grace.
Bad news.
But overall,
sure.
it's the parents obviously should always have a place to keep in mind on what your kids are doing. But I do think eventually that people probably should be more on board for state regulation for the information that our kids are consuming. Because even if you wanted to be optimistic with, I pay attention to what they do on their tablet or their phone. Like, let's be honest, kids will figure out a way around those things too. So you gotta put a sense of a better deterrent for these things, in my personal opinion, so they don't follow under this like rabbit hole of weird information that they're consuming for whatever reason. I don't even know how kids find Sneeko or John Zorka or Andrew Tate, but they do. Probably, I mean, TikTok is very bad at that, honestly. TikTok probably is really bad at that, actually. So, I don't know. I guess this is the final question before we wrap it up. Should we ban foreign social media platforms for the United States if we start having these regulations.
Yes. Yeah, like if you are like an active enemy or a future enemy of the United States, like why the fuck do we let you like use these companies? And even more, like I mean, like I see our troops using TikTok and shit like that, dog, and like they're like in areas where they shouldn't even have phones sometimes, bro. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way too, not gonna lie. We know that TikTok, similar to other social media platforms, is, consuming certain, data about you. But like Paul said, it's different if America's private corporation is doing it versus a Chinese private corporation doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
So
100%.
we got to keep that in mind. Sure, TikTok is cool and all, but America's interest, it should be the best interest at the end of the day, and we'll be fine without TikTok. YouTube Shorts and your Instagram Reels can make up for all of that, honestly. So I might be all for it too. Not gonna lie. So that's about everything we got for today. We kind of talked quite a bit about the potential standards that social media influencers probably should have, as we know for a fact that they are influencing kids and being a negative influence on these kids, whether or not they want to. They make these kids start thinking the most ludicrous things because they consume their information constantly. And as for political leaders, I mean, you got to let political leaders kind of live their life. You know what I'm saying? It does get a little cringe. I'm sure you know that one, I think he was a young Republican representative, and he was talking about all the orgies he was invited to from senators. Like, it gets weird. It gets weird. I will say perception is reality, so I would lean to the side that if you are a weirdo, keep that to yourself. The public doesn't need to know about that. And the public, obviously, the audience, the people, keep an open mind, but keep a stern mind. We don't want the wrong people getting in office just because you watch their porno. Like, come on, what are we doing now? Right? So that is all we got for today. This very important conversation. One of these days, I'm going to have a content creator on, and we're really going to grill the content creator responsibility aspect a lot more in depth. But until we do that, y'all tune in, rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, leave a review. You can also leave send me an email. I guess I could bring this up. I got an interesting email, Paul. I got a very interesting email.
Let me see it.
So I wonder if I should say it out loud. You know what? I will. It's fine.
Sure. I mean, like, if you have to ask yourself that, I think we should go off the air.
Well, he wants me to say it. It's not bad by any means.
Okay.
It's just a very random email, basically.
Go for it.
So this is the email. Dear Mr. Lewis, I'm a Canadian autistic young adult who wants to share the 1981 Chevrolet Impala that was converted to run on ammonia hydrogen by Gregory Vazina, the CEO of Hydrofuel Incorporated, which is located in Ontario, Canada. And he drops links on videos and interviews and pictures, and he also got his email, said, hey man, hit him up about it as well. It was a very, very unique email.
Yeah.
Very unique email. I will say that create more technology. Oh, honestly, I don't think. No, he said mention this information while keeping me anonymous. I'm gonna have to cut all of that out. Never mind. I'm gonna have to cut that out. He didn't want his name to be read. My apologies.
Bro.
I'm gonna cut all that out. So and it'll be all fly. All the live streams will be gone. I am a fair guy. I'm an honest guy, so I'll cut it out.
Sure,
don't worry about it.
it.
Well, y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.
Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.